We'll move to our next question, which comes from Naveed Tahir Saab. Assalamu alaikum, Naveed Saab, and thank you for your question. Again, various discussions being had with a Christian friend of his, and he's a Protestant himself, his friend, and actually follows no other version of the Bible apart from the King James Version, which is a very well respected and long regarded version of the Bible within Christianity. His friend has argued that no one can prove from that particular version, the King James's version, that Jesus alayhi salam, Hazrat Prophet Jesus, did not die on the cross. Can you please answer this question, and indeed if this could be tackled from an Islamic perspective? Dr. Saab, if I could come to you with this, the argument being put forward simply is Protestant faith, King James's version of the Bible, in that it cannot be proven in any verse that Jesus did not die on the cross. Indeed, he did die on the cross, and the King James proves that.
Well, within the limits of this program, we'll try to prove that from the King James's version, we can also prove that Jesus died a natural death and did not die on the cross. But that is one of the elements that does come out. This is where the Holy Quran, the Holy Scripture, supersedes all other scriptures, in that we today have the same text and the same version that we had 1400 years ago, 1500 years ago. So there has been no change in the text of the Holy Quran, and that is the beauty, that it is a universal message which is going to last till eternity. King James Version, as you have said, was a translation of the Bible in the 1600s. And it's interesting that the New Testament was translated from Greek and the Old Testament from the Hebrew language. So that is something that we should always bear in mind, that these are translations. But if Naveed and his friend do go through this version of the Bible, they still can, from the writings of the promised Messiah, correlate the references that we have made, Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam has made, which prove from the Bible that Jesus did not die on the cross. And the references are the same and the writings are the same, even in the King James Bible. So I'll go briefly just through one or two of those, and this will give us ample verification that this is the case. Matthew chapter 12, verse 39 to 40. Jesus said, "An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah." So this is from the King James Version, and this shows that Jesus was aware of that his sign that he was going to give was going to be the same as that of Prophet Jonah. And we all know that Prophet Jonah, when he was in the belly of the whale, he was alive. When he came out of the belly of the whale, he was alive. And he said that the Son of Man also shall enter the belly of the earth and shall remain there 3 days and 3 nights and then come out. So if there is going to be any similarities, then of course we must also follow that Jesus would enter the belly of the earth, meaning the sepulchre, alive, and then he would remain there for that period of time, and when he would come out, he would have the same physical body and life that he had when he went into the belly of the earth. There would be no point of giving this sign as being the sign that was going to be shown in his case if there was no similarities. If he was going to die in the belly of the earth and remain there dead and then be resurrected after that, then there was no point on giving a sign of being like the sign that was given for the people of Jonah. Then the second thing that we can say is that according to the Bible, death by hanging is accursed. From that version we read again Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 23, "For he that is hanged is accursed of God." So this is again from the Bible, from the King James Version, which again says that he who hangeth of the cross is accursed of God. And we as Muslims and Christians also cannot for one moment say that Jesus was an accursed person, that he was in the dark and he was satanic in that respect. Even for 1 second of his life, Hazrat Masih Maud has vehemently made this point to the Christian world, that please do not for a moment put Jesus in this position that he was accursed of God. And because he was a true righteous person, then from that we can say that he did not die on the cross. Otherwise the Jews would have had to say that he had been a false Messiah and that he was accursed of God, and that is why he died on the cross. The last reference again is the same one that we have discussed in this very program. It comes from John chapter 19 verse 34, is again the reference to when the soldiers brought him down from the cross, pierced his side. And the wording here is interesting as well, because it says, but one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. So instead of the word gushed, we have the word forthwith. And if my English is anything to go by, I can assume that the same message is relayed, that there was pressure in that blood which indicated a pumping heart, and that the body was alive at that time. So even from these three references from the King James Version, we can categorically say that from using these references we can show that Jesus alayhi salam was put on the cross, did not die on the cross, was taken down alive, had fallen into a faint, and then recovered in the sepulchre, and then was appeared before people in his same physical body as he had entered the sepulchre at that time.
Jazakallah, Dr. Saab. Just taking you back to your first verse that you quoted. I mean, that's a very, very powerful one, because it's certainly my understanding that in the whole of the Bible, there's only one categoric reference made, that there would be no other sign. And I think Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Hazrat Jesus was clear in responding that these people who would question, this fact, he was very clear in saying there would be no sign but this sign. And it's unequivocal. It's
something which I find say here, which I really find hard to understand when I talk about this sign to Christians whenever I have. It's that for them the sign seems to be the act of going into something, and so they say because Jonah went into the whale, so Jesus goes into the belly of the earth, and so therefore the sign is fulfilled. But what's the sign for Jonah? Is it not? Is the fact that a whale swallowed him a miracle? Or is it the fact that the whale swallowed him and he didn't die? I would think it's that he didn't die. That would be the miracle. That would be a sign. Otherwise, being swallowed by a whale would be, quite easy to do at any time if anyone wants to try it out, I suppose. But actually surviving it would be the miracle. That would be the sign. So that should be also what we should understand from, the act of Jesus going into the sepulchre and coming out and not dying.
Just for Naveed's perspective, and this is an open question to all three of you, I suppose when you have countered in that way, what's been the response? That taking up the point you've just made, that the miraculous element of the 3 days and 3 nights was the fact that he was living.
Well, obviously, usually what happens is that people run away to something else. You talk about A, they'll jump to B, talk about B, they jump to C, because they don't have an answer to this. What can you answer to that? Jesus himself is telling you, as you said, and rightly so, that this is the sign, and yet they run away from it. But the other interesting thing, of course, if we want to stick to the King James, is that even according to the King James, the 3 days and 3 nights were not fulfilled. At best he was in there only for maybe 2 days and maybe a night, or 2 nights and maybe a day. It was far from being 3 days and 3 nights. So it wasn't even in the fact that the days would be fulfilled. It had to be in the fact that he wouldn't die there. That was the only other thing which was the big thing in the sign of Jonah. That was the big element to take from it, the lesson to draw from it, that he didn't die there.
And
see?
And Jahangir Sahib, why would he die? Because prophets of God are very beloved to him. And forget the King James Version, in all of the versions of the Bible, no matter how much they may have drifted from each other in their wording, there is a clear reference where Jesus is mentioned. You made reference to this earlier, that Jesus cried out to God saying, Eli, Eli, lima shabaqtani, oh my Lord, why have you forsaken me in my time of need? And it is recorded in the very Bible that his prayer was heard, his prayer was answered. And of course it would have been answered, because Allah can never accept his indignation, his jealousy for his prophets, can never accept that a prophet of God can be put to death by the hands of his enemies.
What would be left for us if God doesn't take care of his own prophets, those whom he himself sends? What hope would we have, It's a very bleak picture presented, actually. A very depressing one as well, may I add.
Very thought-provoking, actually, what you asked us.
Yes.
Because Christians come out with so many other miracles that Jesus performed, of walking on water, turning water to wine, healing the spiritual or healing the dead. Or he never mentioned any of those signs, did he? And he said, only one sign will be given to you. He could have mentioned, look, if I walk on water, these are my supernatural powers, and therefore I am not man, I am God. But he said that this is the sign that will be given to those people who ask.
And Dr. Saab, if you permit me, and this point which Dr. Saab has mentioned is so profound that in actuality, the fact that Jesus did not mention those other signs, but he mentioned this sign, proves that a fundamental principle of Allah the Almighty with all of His prophets of God, and His greatest miracle is that Kataballahu la'aghlibanna ana wa rusuli. Allah has decreed that Him and His prophets will always be victorious. The hands and the teeth of people, as the promised Messiah alayhi salam states, may grind against a prophet, and the prophet apparently is very weak at the hands of his enemies, but at the end of the day, that prophet is always the one who stands forth victorious, and nobody can harm him, nobody can injure him. So why should we not give this credit to Jesus alayhi salam as well, who was a great prophet of Allah the Almighty?
Jazakumullah, Dr. Saab, and indeed Jahangir Saab, Ya Saab, for answering that. And Naveed Saab, Jazakumullah for your question. We opened it up a bit more there, but I hope you've certainly heard a lot of information here, which I'm sure you can take up with your Christian friend. But if there's any other questions he has, you know what to do. faithmatters@mta.tv is our email.